This broadcast is the property of Codependence Anonymous. Reproduction without written permission from Codependence Anonymous is not permitted.
Everyone's good. So without further ado, we have our keynote speaker for today, Richard, who is going to share with us and for us on being a sponsor. Richard?
Okay. Well, for starters, I'm a grateful and enthusiastic member of Codependence Anonymous. My name is Richard, and I'm codependent as hell. Anytime that I do something like this, I like to start with a prayer. I like to start with a particular prayer. So if you just indulge me, it's called the set-aside prayer. Higher power, help us today to set aside the things we think we know. Help me to set aside the things I think I know about you, the things I think I know about myself, the things I think I know about this program, and the things I think I know about other people, all so that I can have a new experience in you, a new experience in myself, a new experience in these, my fellows, and a new experience in my own recovery. My home group is the Experience, Strength, and Hope group in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, Canada. We have because we're here talking about sponsorship, I want to just briefly talk about a custom that we do in our group, which is that on the Zoom meeting, because we're a hybrid group, or on the phone list when we sign in at the church, if we're willing to be a temporary sponsor, we put an asterisk beside our name. And I think that would be a useful thing to do. If you are available for sponsorship, perhaps you could rename yourself with an asterisk beside your name. I'm told that later on they will be opening up direct chat between participants, and so that might be an opportunity for somebody to reach out to a potential sponsor. So just if you would think about that. The other thing I would ask is that people, if you can, please leave your camera on. I get to do this periodically, and I find that it's a whole lot different from doing it in person. I don't get to get that energy from those people that are face to face, but it's even worse if I'm looking at just a bunch of black squares on the screen. So if you could leave your face on the screen, it helps me so much. We're here today to talk about sponsorship, which is something that I've been sponsoring for 21 years now, and it's something that I'm intensely passionate about. It's been my experience that every sponsorship relationship is unique. It's an intensely personal relationship between two people, and we're here today to talk about how to sponsor. Well, we learn to sponsor by watching our own sponsors. Right? I'm on my third sponsor. My first sponsor showed me what unconditional love looked like. My second sponsor showed me what giving direction looked like. And my third sponsor sponsors just a ton of guys. And he taught me about being a sponsor. The stuff that I'm going to talk about today, I need to tell you, is I'm going to talk about what works for me. What works for me with the guys that I get the privilege of sponsoring. And there's two really important ideas that have to go along for the ride there. First of all, your mileage may vary. Just because it works for me doesn't mean that it's necessarily going to work for you in your situation, because every situation is unique. Also, I am talking about what works for me, which is not by any means a criticism of what you're doing if it's different. I don't know. So that's all that I've been asked to do, is share my experience, strength, and hope, and I can't change what that is. So I think of sponsorship as the catalyst of recovery. If you think back to when you were in high school chemistry, right, you remember what a catalyst is. A catalyst is that substance that, when it's introduced, either initiates or accelerates a chemical process. And that's what sponsorship has done for me. I came to Codependence Anonymous with my world burnt to the ground, and I was broken. And I experienced the welcome and the love and the acceptance in the rooms, and I started healing and growing a little bit, and then I got a sponsor. And boy, did that speed up. And I worked my way through the steps, and then I started sponsoring people, and my recovery accelerated again. Those are the two big acceleration points when I look back on my recovery, was when I got a sponsor and when I started sponsoring. We talk about doing the work around here. And by that, we mean working the steps. I've come to the perspective that the first 11 steps are not the work. The real work is the 12th step. It's carrying a message of hope to somebody who needs it. The first 11 steps are the things that I need to do in order to qualify myself to do the work. So that's my perspective coming into this conversation. So what precisely is sponsorship? Sponsorship is two people sharing this journey. In sponsorship, what's in it for me? It describes sponsorship actually as a three-way partnership between the sponsor, the sponsee, and a loving higher power. And at the end of the day, it's really about one person taking another one by the hand and saying, "This is the path. This is where we go." What sponsorship isn't, and this is where we get into so much trouble when we lose sight of what sponsorship isn't. Right? As a sponsor, I am not a therapist. I am not a counselor. I'm not even necessarily that guy's friend. My job as a sponsor is to love them enough to share the journey and to be honest with them. More than anything else in sponsorship, we serve as an example. Albert Schweitzer is quoted as saying that in influencing others, example is not the most important thing. It is the only thing. So I try to be an example of someone who has recovered from a spiritual illness. And if someone asks me to show them how I accomplished that or how I got there, I'm more than happy to do that. So at the end of the day, the main job of a sponsor is to take a sponsee through the program. And the program is those 12 steps. That's our program of recovery. In addition to taking a sponsee through the steps, a sponsor might share some experience, strength, and hope around living problems that the sponsee is experiencing. Some other obligations of a good sponsor might be to introduce the sponsee to the 12 traditions and those spiritual guidelines for getting along with the other kids in the sandbox. Sponsor also, when we're dealing with a newcomer sponsee, we're an interpreter. Recovery is a foreign language, and it takes a while for somebody showing up in our rooms to learn the language, to become accustomed to the culture of recovery. It's a sponsor's job to introduce the sponsee to things like meeting etiquette and things like the no crosstalk rule. Or even adherence to the group conscience. If we've got a group conscience that says we do not permit outside literature in our meeting, and the sponsee wants to bring an outside piece of literature in because they're very excited about it. It's a sponsor's job to say to them, hey, that's a really great piece of literature. You're welcome to use that at home, but we don't bring it into the meeting, and this is why. So that's kind of a snapshot of what we do as sponsors. One of the things that's kind of an ongoing problem in Codependence Anonymous is that we have a shortage of sponsors. I mean, everybody here, I think, is familiar with that. And why is that? Well, first and foremost, a lot of people are afraid to sponsor. In sponsorship, what's in it for me? There's a passage on page 13. Many of us in Codependence Anonymous are unsure about our own ability to form healthy relationships. We wonder what we might possibly have to offer another person. The thought of becoming a sponsor may trigger our codependency issues. The ensuing agitation and anxiety may be unnerving. As a result, many of us hesitate to step forward. Anybody here identify with that idea? Few hands there. So we're afraid that we're insufficient to the task. We're afraid of screwing them up, or we say, okay, I'm trying to be less controlling, so being a sponsor is not suitable for me. I don't want that much responsibility. Well, it turns out that the biggest responsibility we have as sponsors is just to walk the talk, to be an example of working a program of recovery. Or we may say that we're just too busy. And I think it's important to get past these things. I don't want to say excuses, but these impediments to becoming a sponsor. Because it's really important. It's been hugely important to my recovery to be a sponsor. And one of the greatest things in my life is watching the guys that I've had the privilege of sponsoring start to sponsor guys themselves, and to see the growth that comes with that. Why is it important to be a sponsor? Well, first of all, step 12. Step 12 is a call to sponsorship. Having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, I've had a spiritual awakening, and I am so jazzed about it. I am so excited about what's happened in my life that I just want to share that with anybody who sits still long enough to listen. I want to pay back. This thing has saved my life. And it turns out when somebody saves your life, it's really hard to pay them back. So what we do around here is we pay it forward. We go find somebody to give what we've been given. It's important for me to be a sponsor because every time I take a sponsee through the steps, I have a new experience with the steps. Every time that I work with a sponsee, I get a deeper understanding of the steps and the traditions and the tools of this program because I get to look at them from a new perspective every time. It's important for me to be a sponsor because it's a way for me to honor our fifth tradition, our primary purpose. Each group has but one primary purpose: to carry its message to other codependents who still suffer. And if I'm going to participate in that primary purpose, I think sponsorship is an important part of that. Most of all, it's important for me to sponsor because it promotes my growth. I look at what happened for me when I got here and working those first 11 steps, and I grew a lot. But if I grew like this, sponsorship, once I started sponsoring people, it was like, holy cow. The sky's the limit. It's important for me to be a sponsor because my higher power, I don't know about yours, but mine speaks to me through other people. It turns out that my higher power finds it easiest to speak to me through people who congregate on a weekly basis in church basements. And what happened, my experience has been that my higher power sends somebody across the room to ask me for sponsorship because that guy's a messenger for me. There's a lesson in that sponsee that I need to learn. So, quick show of hands. How many people here have been through at least the first 5 steps of Codependence Anonymous? Okay. Most of us. Excellent. If you go back to our old sponsorship book, that was back in the day when there were not a lot of sponsors in CoDA, even less than today. And the fellowship was new, so very few people had been all the way through the 12 steps. That booklet presented the 5th step as kind of the bottom line requirement for becoming a sponsor. The idea being that if you have been through the 5th step, you were far enough in the program to be able to get somebody else going on the first 3 steps, and then you just had to, work your ass off to stay 1 step ahead of them through the rest of the steps. But how do you know when you're ready to be a sponsor? Now, it's kind of a glib answer, but I think it's right on the nose. How do you know when you're ready to be a sponsor? When they ask you. What we tell newcomers is go to the meetings and look around the room for somebody who has the recovery that you want. And then ask them to show you how they got that. Well, if somebody is asking you to be their sponsor, they're saying implicitly that you have what I want. I love the recovery I see in you. Would you show me how you got that? And that's there's a really cool dynamic there, because we talk about being afraid that we're going to screw them up. We talk about being afraid of not being up to the task. Well, frankly, if they're seeing in you what they want, if you look like a good idea to them, you can't screw them up. Right? If all they're saying is that I want to see the progress, I want to experience the progress that I see in you. When they get to the point that you're at, hopefully you've moved on and you got more to show them. But if they outgrow you, that's okay too. They can go find another sponsor. So if you look like a good idea to them, you can't screw them up. But it's important when we're ready to be a sponsor that we make ourselves available for sponsorship. How do we do that? Well, I already talked a little bit about what we do in the Experience, Strength, and Hope group. Put an asterisk beside our name. I'm willing to be a temporary sponsor. What's a temporary sponsor? Somebody who will get the sponsee going on those early steps while we still look around the landscape to see if there's anybody who is a better long-term prospect. But temporary sponsorship at least ensures that sponsee is not going unsponsored. So how do we make ourselves available? The asterisk, sure. Also at the meetings in fellowship, getting in front of the newcomer, asking questions like, how was your first meeting? Do you have any questions? When I take sponsees through the steps and we get through the 5th step, and I believe in that 5th step qualification to start sponsoring. Part of the conversation that we have after I conclude the 5th step with a guy is, okay, from here on in, I want you to start putting an asterisk by your name. And after the meeting, if I want to talk to the newcomer, I expect I'm going to have to elbow you aside in order to do that. Asking the newcomer, hey, are you going for coffee with the rest of us? It's those coffee conversations more than anything that tend to create an opening for that new person to get up the nerve to ask for sponsorship. Something else is I don't screen phone calls. It's pretty popular these days for people to look at their phone and go, I don't know that number. I'm just going to let it go through to voicemail. Or I don't know that number. I'm just going to reject the call. I don't do that because the newcomer who got a phone list this week isn't in my contact list. So I don't know who I'm rejecting. If it's a telemarketer, I can always hang up. But I don't want to miss the call from somebody who wants my help. So there's a long list in sponsorship. What's in it for me, that the characteristics of CoDA sponsors. And I kind of think of these as an a la carte menu because I don't think I've ever met anybody who has all of these characteristics, but they're a pretty good ideal to strive for. Yeah. The characteristics of CoDA sponsors: place recovery first, commit in word and action to their own recovery. This is from the perspective of the potential sponsee, have more recovery than we have. CoDA sponsor actively works the CoDA 12 steps, knows the CoDA 12 traditions and applies them in their lives. They guide us through the CoDA 12 steps and 12 traditions. They exhibit a recovery program that we want for ourselves. That's the essence of what we do around here. Right? This thing from the very beginning has been built on the idea that if you want what we've got, do what we did. The idea that if your problem looks like my problem, then the thing that worked for you might work for me. And that's the essence of sponsorship. We look around, find somebody who has what we want, and we do what they did. CoDA sponsor are people with whom we identify. They're generally the same gender as we are. They are not sexually attractive to us. They maintain personal boundaries in a non-aggressive manner. That's another benefit of being a sponsor, by the way, is it teaches us boundaries. That's where I learned initially to start setting reasonable boundaries was with my sponsees. Sponsors emotionally present, open-minded. They accept themselves and us. They are equals and treat us as equals. They listen actively without interrupting. They share their own thoughts and feelings with us. They respect our right to confidentiality. They listen with compassion and understanding without rescuing or giving advice. They help us identify codependent behavior in a supportive and non-shaming manner. They accept that we might be working more than one program. They respect and accept our pace. They provide loving support for us and encourage us to reach out to others. They communicate clearly and directly. They ask us questions for clarity, not to control, judge, or manipulate us. They use the sponsorship relationship to grow spiritually, mentally, and emotionally themselves. Talked a little bit about that earlier. They walk the talk. They have a sense of humor and know how to play. A long time ago, I came to the conviction that if you've been at this for any length of time and you're not enjoying it, you might be doing it wrong. Because it turns out that once we get past a certain point, recovery is fun. Now, I love doing I love talking about our program of recovery And sponsees give me the opportunity to do that on a daily basis. So those are some of the characteristics of an effective sponsor. So let's say you've got an asterisk beside your name. You're talking to the newcomer after the meeting. You're going for coffee and doing fellowship with the newcomer, and somebody just asked you to be their sponsor. What's next? What do you do now? If you're like most of us, if it's the first time, you panic. But the most important thing to do at that point is pray and talk to your own sponsor. My sponsor is a bit of a weird duck. He holds the conviction that the only appropriate answer to that question, would you sponsor me, is I'd be honored. I personally have adapted that a little bit. It's I'd be honored. But first, you and I are going to go for coffee. We're going to have a little chat. We're going to talk about what that looks like, and we're going to give you a chance to back out. And we go and we have what I think of as the talk. It's not a universally acceptable position in our fellowship to have requirements for our sponsees, but I do. I have some things that I do require of my sponsees for me to be willing to work with them. And part of it is that, after a while in this program, we spend most of our time and most of our efforts in our recovery in the 12th step. And so today, the quality of my recovery depends a lot on the guys that I work with. And I want to work with guys that want to work this thing. So I sit the guy down for a talk, and we start with, why me? Presumably, you're asking me because you want something that I've got. What is that? What is it that you see that you would like to experience in your life? And then I tell them, you need to understand that as a sponsor, or as sponsors, the only thing we have to offer is our own experience, strength, and hope. That's the only valid thing I have to offer a sponsee. Well, in that vein, I'm a steps and traditions guy. Every good thing in my life today is a result of working the 12 steps and trying to apply the 12 traditions in my life. So that's what I have to offer. First and foremost is the steps and traditions. If you're needing something else other than that, I may not be the right guy. I tell them that the most important thing that I ask of my sponsees is gentle, persistent effort. Okay. Gentle in that most of us, when we got here, pretty hard on ourselves. We need to learn to be gentle with ourselves. And that's been true about just about every sponsee I've ever had. At the same time, we need to be persistent. Being gentle doesn't give us an excuse to just stop and wallow in the pain. And effort, the idea that I'm willing on a daily basis to get up off the couch and do something active in support of my own recovery, putting one foot in front of the other. That's the attitude that I've tried to take for the last couple of decades, and I like to think that it served me well. So if you want what I've got, that's the main thing that I try to do. I'm going to need you to do that. Talk about some other things that I think are important. I ask the guys that I sponsor to actively honor the purpose of our meetings. Fifth tradition says that each group has but one primary purpose: to carry its message to other codependents who still suffer. The point of the meetings is to carry a message of hope to the codependent who still suffers. that means first and foremost that the newcomer is the most important person at every meeting. That's why we have the meetings, is to give the newcomer somewhere to find us. Because it turns out that recovery doesn't happen in meetings. We talk about recovery in meetings, but that's not where the work is done. The work is done across kitchen tables and in coffee shops and over the phone when one works with another. And what the meetings do. Sorry about that. Sorry, I forgot to turn my phone off.
Welcome back, Richard.
Yeah. So the meetings give the newcomer somewhere to find us, so they can get hooked up with us, so they can find a sponsor, so they can engage in this program of recovery. That is the primary point of the meetings. And so the corollary to that is that the meetings are not about my problems. I don't take my problems to a meeting. I got a sponsor for that. What the meetings are for is my solutions. That's that idea of bringing experience, strength, and hope. Bringing a message of hope to somebody who needs it is that what we talk about in the meetings, if it's a healthy meeting, is we talk about our solutions. The newcomer shows up, they don't have anybody anywhere else to dump their problem. Great. But if you've got a sponsor, isn't that a better place to have that discussion instead of in the 3 to 5 minutes that you got to share in a meeting? So I tell my sponsees, I don't want to hear about your problems in a meeting unless I hear about your solutions, because what we share in the meetings are experience, strength, and hope. Right? Let me define that. Experience, strength, and hope looks like, this is what's been going on in my life, and I talked to my sponsor, and he suggested that I do this, and I did that, and this is how it turned out. Okay? You hear those elements: experience and strength and hope. It might be, this is what's been going on in my life, and I talked to my sponsor, and he made this suggestion, and I haven't done that yet, but this is how I hope it comes out. And that works too. But what I hope you never hear from me or from anybody that I sponsor is, this is what's been going on in my life, and I don't know what to do, and I'm screwed. Right? That's not experience, strength, and hope. That's experience, and experience. And it's not what we're about. So I ask my guys to share experience, strength, and hope in the meetings. And if they don't have experience, strength, and hope, this might be a good week to pass. I also tell them that if they do, even if they're bringing their solutions, I don't want to hear about their problems in a meeting for the first time. Because if I'm hearing about it in the meeting for the first time, what's that mean? It means they didn't call me about it. Part of my job as a sponsor is to help them navigate when they have a problem. See if I can share my experience, strength, and hope about applying the steps, the traditions, the tools of the program to a similar problem in my life. And if they're not calling me when there's something going on, then they're not letting me do my job. And that's getting in the way of my recovery. I also tell sponsees that I am going to make lots of suggestions. I can't tell you what to do, but I'm going to make lots of suggestions. And that's exactly what they are. They're just suggestions. You're free to ignore any suggestion I ever make. But if we should ever, either one of us, notice that you, the sponsee, are ignoring pretty much every suggestion that I, the sponsor, am making, I hope at that point that one of us is smart enough to question the point of this relationship, because obviously at that point I'm not helping you, and I need the new sponsee to understand that that's all I care about is that I'm being of help here. My ego is not invested in being the sponsor to any particular person. So if I'm not helping you, my priority is that let's look around the landscape. I got lots of friends in this fellowship. Let's see if we can find somebody whose style is better suited to you, who can help you better than I can. Because I don't want you calling me your sponsor if I'm not able to help you. So that's the conversation that I have. And again, your mileage may vary. You may have completely different requirements, but I think it's important to lay that out at the beginning of the relationship so that everybody's on the same page. And I tell people in that conversation, go away, think about it, and if what I've asked for doesn't seem reasonable to you, that's fine. I'm more than happy to try to help you find somebody else. And as I said, I know lots of people in this fellowship. When is it appropriate to say no when someone asks for sponsorship? Well, first of all, we talked about a little bit in the characteristics of a CoDA sponsor. It made reference to being of the same gender, not sexually attractive to us. If there's any concern about a potential romantic entanglement, that would be a reason for saying no. If we have baggage with that person, some kind of history that would be an impediment to a good working relationship. When I was here for about 2 years, and I hadn't even started sponsoring yet, a woman showed up in the meeting, and she was also a member of Narcotics Anonymous. She was also the former escort that my ex-wife had an affair with the day after I left the house. I had a tough time when she asked me to be her sponsor, but I was able to say gently to her that I'm not ready to sponsor yet, and because of our history, I don't think it'd be a good idea anyway. It might be appropriate to say no if we're overloaded, if we have too many sponsees. I personally have not experienced that. I sponsor a lot of guys. My sponsor probably sponsors 2 or 3 times what I do. And yet, what I find is that if I've taken the third step, a loving higher power doesn't overload me. It may feel briefly like I'm being overloaded, but most of the time, I find that I've got just the right amount of sponsees in my life at any given time. And generally, I've only got 1 or 2 newcomers at a time. Those are the guys that are higher maintenance. Once you get somebody past the third step, and they get into doing the paperwork steps, they become much lower maintenance. There's a little bit of a blip around step 8 and 9 where they become a little higher maintenance, and there's a little blip around step 12 when they start sponsoring that they become higher maintenance. But for the most part, it's been my experience that as long as I've only got 1 or 2 newcomers in those early steps and still dealing with the kind of crisis that got them to CoDA in the first place, that they're generally not a lot of work. So somebody's asked you, you've said, I'd be honored. You've had a conversation that says, this is what this looks like. What's next? Well, first thing to do in my mind is get them going on the steps. And particularly those first 3 steps, because they are the foundation for the recovery, for this program of recovery. We also get going on the 12 traditions. Some of you are probably familiar with the 12-piece relationship toolkit booklet, which talks about the spiritual principles in our 12 traditions as tools for relationship. I believe strongly in what it says in there, which is that if the only requirement for membership in CoDA is a desire for healthy and loving relationships, the traditions are at least as important as the 12 steps for somebody in our program, because they speak directly to the reason we're here. We want healthy and loving relationships, and those 12 principles are tools for getting there. So at least as important as the steps. But the bad news is the steps seem to be a prerequisite. I've not seen anybody ever be able to apply the 12 traditions in a meaningful and sustainable way in their life unless they had first worked the steps. How do we take a sponsee through those first 3 steps? What does that look like? Well, keep in mind that the sponsee is asking you because they want what you've got. So what's the best way to take them through those early steps? Show them what you did. For me, it really boils down to the first step is an admission that I have a problem so big that it's beyond my capacity to solve. So what I need to do is to help the sponsee see their own powerlessness and their own unmanageability. And what that looks like varies from person to person. I personally am not a great believer in workbooks. My sponsees get away cheap because they don't have to buy that big green workbook. They can if they want to. It just doesn't buy them any credit with me, because we're going to do this more in a conversational way. And sometimes it's looking at the patterns of codependence and have these been true for you? And individually, what's an example of each of those patterns in your life? Have you tried to stop doing that? And have you been successful at stopping? And when a sponsee goes through 40 or so of those patterns and realizes, I've tried to stop and I can't, 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 that kind of rubs their nose in their own powerlessness. And that is the essence of step 1. That I got a problem so big I can't solve it, and by the way, it's killing me. And what step 1 does is it creates the need for step 2. Right? The idea that if step 1 is true, then I need step 2 or I'm screwed. So step 2, and I need to also say that I am a great believer in working the steps the way that they're written, doing what they actually say. And step 2 says that we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. We don't even have to believe that it would restore us to sanity. We just have to believe that there's something out there that could. And for some people, it's the religious deity that they grew up with. For others, it is, in my case, for example, kind of a vague understanding of something out there that loves me and wants the best for me, and seems to have some kind of influence in my life. But I got here a lifelong agnostic, and now I'm an agnostic with a higher power. For others, it might just be the wisdom of the program is their higher power. It might just be the collective wisdom of the fellowship. It might be nature, whatever it is that is their higher power, as long as they believe that there's something that can solve their problem. Because the minute that they get there, then the third step becomes a no-brainer. Right? Third step says, okay, this thing that can solve my problem, we'll give it a shot. We'll let it try. It's a commitment to try one day at a time, to do the things that loving higher power would have us do. I've come to believe that the third step is the program in a nutshell. That the first two steps, their only purpose is to get me to that decision in the third step. And the rest of the steps are all about implementing and affirming that decision, right? So I make that decision in the third step, and I don't know how to turn my will and my life over to the care of a loving higher power. But I've made a commitment to try. And that's the transformation. That's, I go in the front end of that decision. I'm this frightened, selfish, self-centered codependent. And I make a decision, and I'm still frightened and selfish and self-centered. But I'm changed because I'm committed to trying a new path. So that is kind of a very snapshot view of how I'll take guys through the third step. But we have other resources, we have other ways, and again, your mileage may vary. There's I believe it's a conference endorsed now, the 30 questions out of Northern California, which are a guide to sponsorship in the early steps. I think somebody from Australasia is probably going to talk about their first 14 days document there, which is kind of an encapsulation of step 0, step 1. But most of all, the most important thing is, what did you do to get through those first 3 steps? Show them that. Because that's your experience, strength, and hope. We talk about once we get them going on the steps, and again, it's a matter of, for each of those steps, how did I work it? This is what I did. And as we go along, we pick up other options. And taking a guy through the steps the second time, well, maybe we'll experiment with doing this that I heard about. Was this friend of mine did this? Let's try it together. And we get to both have a new experience with the steps. So we've done the steps. We're maybe using the 12-piece relationship toolkit to introduce this sponsee to the traditions and these principles for or guardrails for our relationship in our behavior and relationships. But life happens, and sponsees have this tendency to have crises and problems cropping up. And what do I do about this? And so how do we deal with living problems? Well, first thing I do when a sponsee calls me and says I've got a problem, I tune them out for the next 30 seconds. I say a prayer. Higher power, help me to find the words that you want this man to hear. Help me to hear from him what you want me to hear. And then because they never say anything important in the first 30 seconds. It's always a long preface. And then we can get into the conversation and the meat of the matter. And what I try to listen for is identification. Is okay, have I experienced what he's going through? Have I had the problem that he's talking about? Because then I can go back into my catalog of memories, say, yeah, okay, that happened to me. And this is what I did. And this is how it turned out. That experience, strength, and hope. Or I try to listen for the fear. What's he afraid of? Maybe I've not been in that situation, but maybe I've had that same fear. The circumstances may be different, but the feelings are the same. And if I can talk about how I've dealt with that feeling, then I have something to offer him. If I don't find somewhere some common touch point where I have relevant experience to share, then as I think about, okay, who do I know? Oh, you're going through a divorce. I've never been through a divorce in recovery. I'm going to give you 2 names and numbers, and I'd like you to call these 2 guys because they have both been through divorce in recovery, and both worked really hard to navigate that with integrity and dignity. I'd like you to talk to them. Oh, your parent died, and you're having sibling problems with the probate stuff. Okay, I'd like you to give this guy a call because he's been through that. And so I don't have to have all of their answers. I get myself into trouble if I try to have all of their answers. What I have is a network of friends who've had way more experiences than I've had, and I can refer them to them. It's important in trying to understand their situation, whatever their problem is that they're calling about, is to elicit questions and get more clarity, because usually when somebody is describing the big bad problem in their life, they're not real clear. I'll ask a question: what happened? Well, she threw a plate at me. Well, first of all, who's she? And trying to get a clear understanding of what the heck is going on. And then when we do get a clear understanding of what's going on, and okay, most of the time, the solution might be obvious to us. Yeah, I find that when I have a problem, the solution isn't necessarily obvious to me because I'm too close to it. I'm too invested emotionally. And there are times when the rawest newcomer has a better perspective on my problem than I do, simply because they have a little bit of distance and a little bit of perspective. So a lot of times a sponsee will call and we may think that the solution is obvious. But I find that what's best is not to tell the sponsee the answer that I see, but instead to ask leading questions. Why do you think she did that? What do you think you could have done better in that situation? And the reason that leading questions are so effective is that, if I tell him something, he's got my answer. If I ask him a question and he tells me the same thing, he's got his answer. And that's a really powerful tool. So just keeping an eye on the time here. That's kind of an overview of what I do or try to do in sponsorship. I try very hard to remember that I'm not giving advice, I'm making suggestions. I am not telling the guy what to do. I am not solving his problems. I am just offering perspective. I'm offering my experience, strength, and hope. I'm pointing out options to him that he may not otherwise see. In other words, the biggest thing that I as a sponsor can bring to that relationship is an outside perspective.
5-minute warning, Richard.
Thank you. So Finally, I want to talk a little bit about sponsorship and boundaries, because sponsees can make inappropriate requests. What do inappropriate requests look like? Well, big one to me is I'm not a therapist. So I'm not a doctor. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a counselor, and so I really try to avoid conversations that get into the minute psychological theories, and I really try not to give anybody a diagnosis because I'm not qualified. And so I try to turn it back to, have you talked to your higher power? What does God say? Have you done writing? What step can we approach this with? I also, some of the boundaries that I put in place is I don't sponsor by text. I am happy to take a text with a quick, if I can give you an answer in one sentence, perfect, I'll do that. Mostly we do text as a negotiation platform for when we can do a phone call. And the problem is with text is that there's no nuance there. And it's really, really difficult to give a nuanced answer to a question when I'm typing with my thumbs. So I really prefer to do that on the phone. Solving their life problem, right? Lending money, housing, babysitting, those kinds of things. They may be something that we're willing to do, but I would refer you to those questions that we have in the 12-piece relationship toolkit. Right? Did they ask, is it necessary? Will it be appreciated? And can I afford it emotionally, physically, financially, and spiritually? Maybe explore all of those before jumping in to solve a sponsee's problem. Triangulation. She's really mad at me. Would you talk to her for me? No, I won't. That's not my job. I'm your sponsor, not hers. Or demands for 24/7 availability. I said before that being a sponsor is where I learned boundaries. It's where I learned to be able to say to somebody, I'm just watching a movie with my wife. If this isn't an emergency, I will call you back in an hour. Or I'm just sitting down to dinner. Can you phone back in 40 minutes? And yeah, I mean, I went through some uncomfortable family situations as a result of not having boundaries early on. And that is how I learned to have reasonable boundaries. And when I learned to do that with sponsees, I learned to do that with other people. So I mean, this is some of the benefit of being a sponsor.
1 minute reminder, Richard.
Okay. I am going to go just a tiny bit over time because I have one little closer that is really important to me, and I'm going to try to get through this without tears. When I do this, I like to close with a poem, and it's by Sam Shoemaker, who was the rector of Calvary Church in New York City. It's where Bill Wilson got sober in the Oxford groups. So this guy was one of the spiritual mentors of Bill Wilson, who started this movement. And it's called "I Stand by the Door." I stand at the door, and it speaks to me of what sponsorship is really about. I stand by the door. I neither go too far in nor stay too far out. The door is the most important door in the world. It's the door through which men walk when they find God. There is no use my going way inside and staying there when so many are still outside, and they, as much as I, crave to know where the door is. And all that so many ever find is only the wall where the door ought to be. They creep along the wall like blind men with outstretched, groping hands, feeling for a door, knowing there must be a door, yet they never find it. So I stand by the door. The most tremendous thing in the world is for men to find that door, the door to God. The most important thing that any man can do is to take hold of one of those blind, groping hands and put it on the latch that only clicks and opens to the man's own touch. Men die outside the door as starving beggars die on cold nights in cruel cities in the dead of winter, die for want of what is within their grasp. They live on the other side of it because they've not found it. Nothing else matters compared to helping them find it and open it and walk in and find Him. So I stand by the door. Go in, great saints. Go all the way in. Go way down into the cavernous cellars and way up into the spacious attics. It is a vast and roomy house, this house where God is. Go into the deepest of hidden casements of withdrawal, of silence, of sainthood. Some must inhabit those inner rooms and know the depths and heights of God and call outside to the rest of us how wonderful it is. Sometimes I take a deeper look in. Sometimes I venture in a little further, but my place seems to be closer to the opening. So I stand by the door. There's another reason why I stand there. Some people get partway in and become afraid lest God and the zeal of His house devour them, for God is so very great and asks all of us. And these people feel a cosmic claustrophobia and want to get out. Let me out, they cry. And the people way inside only terrify them more. Somebody must be by the door to tell them that they are spoiled for the old life. They have seen too much. One taste of God and nothing but God will do anymore. Somebody must be watching for the frightened who seek to sneak out just where they came in, to tell them how much better it is inside. The people too far in do not see how near these are to leaving, preoccupied with the wonder of it all. Somebody must watch for those who have entered the door but would like to run away. So for them too, I stand by the door. I admire the people who go all the way in, but I wish they would not forget how it was before they got in. Then they would be able to help the people who have not yet even found the door, or the people who want to run away again from God. You can go in too deeply and stay in too long and forget the people outside the door. As for me, I shall take my old accustomed place, near enough to God to hear Him and know He is there, but not so far from men as to not hear them and remember they are there too. Where? Outside the door. Thousands of them, millions of them, but more important for me, one of them, two of them, 10 of them, whose hands I'm intended to put on the latch. So I shall stand by the door and wait for those who seek it. I'd rather be a doorkeeper, so I stand by the door. I love you all. Thank you so much for your attention today.
Thank you, Richard. All right. So just a note. The agenda is using back-to-back content. All right. So we will have a break later for a very brief break, but if you need to take a break, please do so. The priority is to take care of yourself as needed. This event is being recorded, so you won't miss anything. You can always go back to the recording. Okay, so please take care of yourself. All right, our next presenter is Linda, who I've had the pleasure of meeting and speaking with and getting to know. Linda will be talking to us about CoDAteen, which I am looking forward to. Linda, where are you?
I'm right here.
There
I'm
you
in one of the
are.
little squares all the way to the left, up at the top.
Welcome.
Thank you. And are you going to be sharing my PowerPoint or should I?
Susan will be doing that as she switches over.
Excellent. Thank you, Susan. Well, she's getting that ready. Good afternoon, everyone. Richard with a T. You are amazing. Thank you so much for what a wonderful, beautiful start for the day. My name is Linda, and I am a grateful, recovering codependent. I reside here in New York, so good morning for those in the West Coast, good evening for those in the UK and all those other places. I currently hold the role of the CoDAteen World Committee Chair. I'm truly, truly grateful for this opportunity to be here and come share some information about CoDAteen, which in my mind is a vital part of CoDA, and to discuss a little bit about the CoDAteen Committee and our goals in attracting and welcoming teens to this wonderful fellowship. Next slide, please. So what is CoDAteen? CoDAteen is a part of Codependence Anonymous, and it supports teens in developing healthy, loving relationships with themselves, others, and their higher power. And as CoDAteen is a part of CoDA, it's designed to support the unique needs and experiences of teenagers and young adults from the ages of 13 to 23. Our mission here at the CoDAteen Committee is to provide a safe and welcoming and supportive environment where young people can learn, grow, and share openly about their challenges and their triumphs. We believe that our efforts of the wider CoDA Fellowship to welcome teens and share information about CoDAteen is so very important to share in our own adult groups, our families, our communities. It's greatly needed to attract those teens and give the information that we're here to help them. By spreading this awareness, we can reach more teens, more young people that can benefit from our supportive community that we're all sharing in here today. The truth for me is that I don't believe that we live in a vacuum. And I think that we've all suffered at one time in our lives. And it's that suffering that we can use to help the young people in our lives, in our world today. So think about when you were a teenager, all these questions that are here. Did you cover up your feelings? Did you have difficulty saying no? Did you deny your own thoughts? Did you feel responsible for others' emotions and behaviors? Did you make excuses for other people's behavior? Did you feel like you didn't fit in? Or you had to do things just to be liked? Did you feel sad, depressed, lonely, or isolated? And imagine that. Imagine the same feelings and thoughts that brought you here to adult CoDA. Those same feelings and thoughts are happening right now in the youth of our everyday lives today. Instead of them asking themselves, what is wrong with me? We can help them identify and share what happened to them. Next slide, please. So why CoDAteen? Codependency also affects young people. Patterns begin for adults in childhood. Codependency can develop from a very early age, often from childhood trauma. Teenagers are young adults who need a safe space to relate and heal with others their age. They need an environment where they can learn how to develop healthy and loving relationships with themselves, with others, and a higher power from a place of love. Next slide, please. So what does CoDAteen offer? CoDAteen offers a safe, kind, and peer-based English and Spanish meetings where sharing, self-reflection, and growth can occur. Teenagers are guided by our 12 steps, 12 traditions, and a step study. Next slide, please. The primary purpose of our CoDAteen meetings is to provide a safe, quiet, and supportive atmosphere of acceptance to allow the teens to express themselves and what they're feeling about, what their feelings are helping them to experience. It acts as a mirror of validation in which teens may begin to learn to trust and experience their perceptions and their feelings. Teens, like everyone else, want to be heard. Acceptance of others sharing is an expression of love and emotional support. Next slide, please. So the structure and safety in our CoDAteen meetings, we take that very seriously, and it's very important to us as a committee and to the adult hosts that currently are signed up to help us carry the message. Meetings are led by teens along with adult meeting hosts who are trained by our committee and vetted by our committee. The adult host who is in the meeting guides. They do not sponsor the teenager. They do not offer advice, and we definitely do not rescue. Ages for the teenagers are typically from 13 to 18. And then we do have some meetings allowing for young adults up to the age of 23. Groups are approved and registered on CoDA World website. There are currently 3 meetings that are registered there. And when you look up meetings, you just look for CoDAteen and you'll see the meetings there. Next slide, please. Boundaries and safety in CoDAteen meetings. So appropriate boundaries are essential in the meetings, and they're outlined in our CoDAteen meeting handbook, which is available on the coda.org/CoDAteen website. We believe that the best practice for any face-to-face meeting or Zoom meeting is to have 2 adult hosts, 2 vetted adult hosts in every meeting. It's suggested that you keep a list of community resources available in your area in case there is physical violence that's being shared, or abuse, or any type of suicide prevention. Also know your area and your country guidelines, the requirements for reporting any suspected child abuse or sexual abuse. It's very important. Next slide, please. So here we are. These are our CoDAteen World Committee goals and our action plans for 2025 and 2026. So we have some big goals and some big dreams set for us this year, and we definitely need some help. So our primary goals are to continue to encourage the adult CoDA groups to sponsor CoDAteen meetings, increase community-based outreach activities of the CoDAteen program. So if you're having an event for CoDA, invite CoDAteen to come, have CoDAteen come share at these events, which I appreciate so much allowing us to be here. Increase awareness amongst the adults in our own fellowship. So if you're currently in a CoDA group, whether it be on Zoom or whether it be in face-to-face during announcement time, please talk about CoDAteen. Share our flyers that we have available. Share our information. Share with your own family, people that you know that might benefit from this program. So we're also looking to develop a CoDAteen subcommittee that will be will consist of the teens and the young adults to work on developing recovery materials that's teen and young adult has their perspective on it. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Thank you, Susan. What? Back one, please. The other way. There you go. Okay, so we're working on creating multimedia content, materials that we can share with the teens, and also have them share their experience, strength, and hope on social media and different venues that they identify with. The TikToks, all those different things, all those acronyms that they use that I'm not really 100% aware of as of yet. But I do work with young people that have been very supportive in helping me. And shout out to my friend Joanne, who helped me with this PowerPoint. We're going to work with the board this year, and we're committed to updating the CoDAteen webpage and creating new training videos, audio-visual resources where the teens and young adults can find age-appropriate material, where they can talk about things that are about recovery.
Linda, 1 minute reminder. Thank you.
Develop a committee outreach blast system. We're working on that. And to establish, we currently have 1 Spanish-speaking meeting, so we're looking to establish additional ones and also have a Spanish CoDAteen subcommittee to represent at our monthly business meetings. Next slide, please. So here's our CoDAteen website. A wealth of information there, coda.org/CoDAteen. We have a ton of material out there, the preamble, the parental guardian permission slip, all of our meeting handbooks. We'll be talking more about this in our breakout room. And then finally, our last slide, please, Susan. So what's important to us? What's our call to action today is we need help. We need help in all different areas. It's not about just starting a meeting or being an adult host. We need help in all different areas. I like to remind myself often that I can't recover alone. Today and on Valentine's Day, we're here with the theme of love and acceptance. We're celebrating our 40th anniversary in October, and we have to remember that teens are the future of CoDA. And we believe that by focusing on the goals that I spoke about briefly today and bringing our collective efforts as our CoDA Fellowship and its members to spread the word about CoDAteen, we can make a significant impact in the lives of the teenagers and in the future of our fellowship. So I'd like to thank you for this time, for me to share our vision and our heartfelt commitment to welcoming more teens into our community. Please join us in the breakout room. We'll have some members from the committee there that can answer questions that are currently using meetings and doing meetings, questions and answers. And we need your help. We need your help. The teens need your support. So please come and join us and see where you may be of service. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Linda. You're a wonderful leader. I know it takes a team, and you have a great team. So thank you for being part of that and leading that. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce Jillian, who is going to talk about healthy CoDA step groups. I don't think Jillian needs any introduction, but Jillian, welcome.
Hi. Thank you very much. Hi, my name's Jillian, and I'm codependent. And thank you for the wonderful talks today. Been really brilliant up to now. Thank you. I'm here to talk about healthy CoDA step groups, and it's a guide to running effective codependent anonymous step study meetings as far as I've experienced. Next slide, please. Sorry, next slide, please. Thank you. And so why CoDA step group matters. So it creates safe boundaries, and experienced guidance creates a winning ticket for keeping participants interested and motivated. And step groups should be fun and inspiring as we see fellow CoDA members become familiar with the inner workings of the CoDA steps and traditions. It addresses the shortage of CoDA sponsors by providing a group-based approach to working the steps, and it uses CoDA Service Conference endorsed literature. For instance, the 30 questions, steps 1, 2, and 3, and the 40 questions, steps 4 and 5, and many others. Next slide, please. So I found that the problem in CoDA is that there are not enough CoDA members that are able to sponsor to go around. To remedy that, I was thrilled to discover at the CoDA Service Conference in 2019 in Atlanta, that's the business part of CoDA, where voting entity members are sent from their area or country as representatives to vote on important matters concerning the whole of CoDA, and we do this annually as a business meeting of CoDA. They had a newly endorsed CoDA literature, and afterwards at the International CoDA Conference, ICC, they had endorsed this 30 questions, and I went to a workshop. I was overwhelmed by it, thought it was absolutely wonderful, took it back to the UK, and we started working it. And in the following years, they produced the 40 questions, working steps 4 and 5, also endorsed by CoDA Service Conference. And they are a brilliant way for especially new sponsors to learn how to find their way around the Codependence Anonymous book with confidence, either on a one-to-one basis, but even better with a step group of no more than, I say, between 5 and 8 members for it to be manageable. So anyone wondering if they should begin sponsoring can begin here with these wonderful CoDA tools. Next slide, please. And so here we have each step study requires specific CoDA literature, and there's lots of different CoDA literature, but these are suggestions that we use in our start meetings. Step 1, 2, and 3, we would use the CoDA 30 questions using 1 question a week, the Codependence Anonymous Blue Book, and the Codependence Anonymous Step Handbook. And then for steps 4 and 5, we'd use the CoDA 40 questions with, again, 1 question a week, and the Codependence Anonymous Blue Book, and the CoDA 12 Steps and Handbook. And now on 6 and 7, we have a wonderful booklet from CoDA, which is the Making Choices in Recovery, which was actually created originally for steps 6 and 7, which is a wonderful edition, wonderful affirmations, and also good for newcomers too. Wonderful little book. And then the CoDA 12 Steps and 12 Traditions Green Workbook with the questions, using a few each week. And then the CoDA 12 Step Handbook, and then the Codependence Anonymous Blue Book, especially chapters 2 and 5, my favorite, which is chapter 2, Our Spiritual Dilemma, which is really a précis of steps 2 and 3, but it's a wonderful chapter. And then chapter 5, which has all sorts of things like boundaries, enmeshment, detachment, shame spiral, many more wonderful things. If you haven't read them, it's a wonderful book, wonderful part of it. And then steps 8 and 9, using the CoDA 12 Steps and 12 Traditions workbook with the questions, and then the CoDA 12 Step Handbook, and then the CoDA Blue Book, again, chapters 2 and 5. And then finally with the steps 10, 11, and 12, if people are still with you by then, hopefully they are, the CoDA 12 Steps and 12 Traditions Green Workbook with the questions, CoDA 12 Step Handbook, the Codependence Anonymous Blue Book, chapters 2 and 5, and a wonderful new edition, which is our CoDA book, Issues with the God Word, which has lots of things with meditation, short stories about people, about spirituality, a really wonderful addition to the CoDA, made by CoDA Literature Committee, by codependents for codependents. And then there's the, we use the In This Moment meditation book in each session using that daily reading. Next slide, please. And then setting up your group. So initial steps, asking your CoDA meeting for members interested in working the steps 1, 2, and 3. So gather 5 to 8 committed CoDA members, and they need to be committed that they really seriously do want to work them, and try and stay the course. Arrange a suitable day and time for all. And if you're doing it online, great, we can do the Zoom, or if it's face-to-face, finding a room. And find a facilitator who has worked the steps and the traditions, somebody who you trust and who you feel has a feeling around the CoDA steps and traditions. And then the facilitator, what's the facilitator or host's role? Sets up WhatsApp group and Zoom or online meeting facilities, oversees weekly meetings and timing of participants' shares, steps in only when guidance is needed or requested, and reads next week's questions at the end, and sends follow-up emails with overview and readings. Next one, please. Next slide. Thank you. And what happens? We'll read over the introductory first pages together. That's certainly in the 30 questions. You will have that, as it says about the God box and various things. And then each member shares in this first meeting on their hopes and fears in approaching the CoDA steps, because it can feel quite daunting. All members share between 7 and 10 minutes, timed depending on the number of participants, and the workshop or meeting lasts 2 hours each week. And this sets a safe, supportive foundation for the journey ahead. Next slide, please. And the host introduces with instructions of turn off and silence mobile phones if it's on video, if it's online, keep video on unless moving about, and mute when not speaking, raise hand when you want to give service. And of course, if it's a face-to-face, it's slightly different. Opening elements would be a moment's silence for the still suffering codependent, and the CoDA opening prayer, which everybody reads together. And then the welcome, if people are there just at the beginning, they've not been really to meetings before, welcome them if it's their first, second, or third meeting to stay for at least the first 6 meetings to encourage them. And the daily readings from the CoDA In This Moment meditation book for that day, and CoDA announcements, and really important is the monthly group conscience. Usually we do it on the last meeting of the month for no more than 10 minutes, just to sort things out. And next slide, please. And then we read the CoDA opening prayer together, you know, in the spirit of love and truth. We ask our higher power to guide us, etc. And that is actually on the at the back of the green workbook. Right at the back, you've got several little prayers there, and the new workbook. Next slide, please. And then we have the 4 foundational documents, and the participants take turns in reading these documents. The CoDA preamble, the CoDA welcome, the short version, the Codependence Anonymous 12 steps, and the Codependence Anonymous 12 traditions. Next slide, please. And then we read the patterns and characteristics. The host reads, this checklist is offered as a tool to aid in self-evaluation. It may be particularly helpful to newcomers as they begin to understand codependency. It may aid those who've been in recovery a while to determine what traits still need attention and transformation. And the different participants read aloud all 5 sections. And those are on usually in the green workbook, the new one, it's page 62 to 64, or in the 3rd edition Codependency Anonymous book starting on page 4. And then they read one person reads the denial patterns, another low self-esteem patterns, compliance patterns, control patterns, and then avoidance patterns. Next slide, please. And then we do a feelings check. Each participant shares just a few words as a check-in, 30 seconds to 1 minute maximum, and the host shares last. There'll be a time to share more fully later. And then the host reads the CoDA guidelines for sharing. For safety's sake, can you just go to the next one a moment, please? Then we'll go back to this one. The next slide, thank you. We read out, which is a lovely guidelines for sharing. For safety's sake, while many of us were growing up, no one listened to us. We were told our feelings were wrong, that they did not matter. We were often interrupted and criticized. We need to know that in meetings we can share without fear of interruption, criticism, or contradiction. We do that by observing the following. No, not judging, offering advice, or making comments, not interrupting or engaging in discussion, using I statements, showing our own experience, strength, and hope, no one else's. Refraining from commenting on other shares by being aware of the time available for shares and giving advice to yourself. Not giving advice to people before and after the meeting unless it is requested. As codependents, we are learning to set boundaries and recognize that they are vital to recovery. This is why we discourage feedback and crosstalk and advice giving. We need to learn to keep the focus on our own recovery rather than rescuing or controlling others. If you think that these guidelines have been violated, please ask the chairperson to read them again at the end of a particular share. Could you just go back one, please? The slide. Thank you.
1 minute reminder,
Thank you.
Jillian.
Thank you very much. The main sharing time. The host reads the questions and any readings are read by the various people in the meeting. Each person has 7 to 10 minutes shared, which is timed. Written homework is answered first, and then general sharing if time permits. And time is divided equally for all participants. Next slide, please. And the next one, please. Thank you. And the closing section, 15 minutes before we close, a 1 minute share check-in, how participants are feeling or whether anything came up listening to the shares. You might have been triggered. So you leave the meeting feeling safer. And the host reads out the following week's question. And then proceeding to the formal closing, and you ask if anybody needs to talk afterwards, please talk to somebody. Don't leave the meeting without. And then the participants read, we have a set thing, which is the positive affirmations, reading 2 of them or reading your own affirmations. And then the host reads the beginning of the 12 promises of Codependence Anonymous. And then each person reads at least 1, maybe 2 of the promises of CoDA. And they thank people for their participation. Next one, please. And then CoDA is an anonymous program. We ask that you respect the anonymity of each person at this meeting, who you see here, what is said here, when you leave here, let it stay here. And thank you to all who've given service in this workshop or meeting. Next one, please. Sorry. I'm sorry, I can see somebody's face. I can't see the yeah. The next one, please. Next slide, please. Yes, there's the closing prayer, which everybody reads together. And then there's a long serenity prayer, which is wonderful. And then the final one, thank you. And thank you. May your journey through the CoDA steps bring you wisdom, love, and hope. And I'm sorry it's been so rushed, but in 10 minutes, it's very difficult. So if anybody wants a copy of it, I'll put my email in the chat and you can send for a copy of it. Love and light. Thank you.
Wonderful, Jillian. Thank you so much. I could listen to you all day. And so we continue our journey around the globe from Great Britain. Now we're going over to Australia. Australasia, which I have a hard time saying, by the way. Anne, are you out there?
I am.
Welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm Anne. I also have trouble saying Australasia, and but there we are. I'm codependent, and I'm the current coordinator for sponsorship for CoDA Australasia. 2 weeks ago, we had a meeting on sponsorship, and we decided not to call it a workshop because people were having meltdowns as if there was the one way, and we were going to teach you how to be a sponsor. But there is no one way. And so we had a topic meeting covering various questions, such as, do you need a sponsor to work the steps, the benefits, finding a sponsor, what healthy sponsor-sponsees relationships looks like, managing expectations and boundaries, and troubleshooting. We had 100 sign up and 60 to attend, and we didn't actually record it. So most people had to stay for the whole meeting to get what they wanted. CoDA Australasia has 52 meetings over 5 countries, and I'm the fifth sponsorship coordinator since 2001 for sponsorship. And it was handed over to me as a list of names with arrows and an email address and the instructions of it's a God job. And that was it. I tend to match first 14-day participants with temporary email sponsors and link up people with co-sponsorship requirements, as well as special needs sponsors for the steps. I don't tend to allocate step sponsors with people wanting to do the steps, but I do support people looking for sponsorship with my slightly lardy technique. I say, what do you want? When you're in a meeting, you hear the message that you like, ask them to sponsor you. Most active sponsors in Australasia do have more than one sponsee. That we also have a trouble of amount of sponsors, but I never recommend more than 3 sponsees at any one time. For me, I will have enough time for 3 sponsees and my own sponsor. I don't have any more time than that, and I don't expect anybody else to either. These days with Zoom and WhatsApp groups and the 30 questions and the 40 questions and the new revamped 12 Steps and 12 Traditions workbook, we're in a very healthy place, plus all those brochures on sponsorship. So there is no one way. But what is the first 14 days that I'm talking about? Well, it first started in 2001, even before the Green 12 Steps and 12 Traditions workbook, by Sydney CoDA, as a response to the lack of experienced sponsors and to enable co-sponsorship relationships to start. It was a photocopied document. It was posted out to groups who then photocopied it for work with their own members. Its use was by telephone, and daily the temporary sponsor and the sponsee would call each other, do the tasks, and sometimes the sponsor would even give feedback. In 2008, an electronic document was created that was emailed out, and the format as we know today was created. And task was emailed to the temporary sponsor, and no feedback was given. In those early days, most CoDA members had come from other 12-step sponsorships, fellowships, and understood sponsoring, but needed the crash course in codependency, and that's what the first 14 days is. This document also enables brand new users to use it as a temporary sponsorship. A day's task is sent out, a day's task is sent back in, it's acknowledged, but no feedback is given, just like a meeting. It was done over 14 or 21 days, and it enabled a beginner in CoDA to hold a simple boundary and gave them a script to work with. And in the case someone taking too long, how to move them along. It's thought that over 2,000 members have used the first 14 days program either on its own or in conjunction with other literature or in study groups. In 2023, a very new member started an unstoppable process for the first 14 days to become a CoDA conference-approved literature for use. And initially in Australasia, there was resistance to this because we loved our spelling mistakes, we loved our bad formatting in the clip art, and we also loved the addition to wisdom. But we started to get members from Ireland and Africa, and these were very active members, and we needed to step up our game. So we prepared it to go to the CSC, and 18 months of meetings allowed us to create the new first 14 days document with edition 3 quotes, with limited spelling mistakes, and the removal of some of the most irritating duplications, the characteristics of codependence, which was used like a hammer in the old document. But it also gave us new hope with the addition of the 12 promises of Codependence Anonymous. It went to the CSC last July. You'll find it on the CSC webpage, and you'll also find it on CoDA Australasia's webpage as well. It contains the preamble and welcome of Codependence Anonymous, denial and acceptance, patterns and characteristics, codependency and recovery, the differences, step 1, boundaries, shame, affirmations, self-care, keeps going, controlling and avoiding, enmeshment, detachment and avoidance, self-parenting, bottom line behaviors, and finishes up with the promises. It's a real boot camp. And currently I'm road testing it again. I do it every year to keep me humble. I'm finding this particular document a delight. And I'm really surprised because we went through every word, every paragraph with a fine-tooth comb. Every punctuation mark was questioned, and we moved at such a sloth's pace. It's a wonderful document, and I suggest that you try it as well. And most STEP sponsors these days in CoDA Australasia will require that their new sponsee has done this first 14 days process. And the sponsee, having done the first 14 days, understands the culture of sharing, has had a crash course in what codependency is, understands the requirement of writing from a deep connected space, and it makes the sponsor's role much easier. And it's not just about the sponsor, but it does make the sponsor's role a bit easier. And as it's called the first 14 days, it was designed to set up as a discipline of daily work every single day. And most folks will finish it within 3 or 4 weeks. But I did have a sponsee say to me the other day that they were going to take 14 months and there wasn't anything that I could do about that. And I can't because they're not my sponsee. But I can't control anyone. But I do urge temporary new email sponsors not to manage unmanageability or perfectionism by allowing that process to draw out. This teaches time boundaries and gives practice in holding the sponsee accountable and by letting any errant sponsee go. The recent topic meeting we had on sponsorship ended with the statement that there are as many sponsees as there are sponsors. And any troubles that come up in sponsorship are and is the work of recovery. And I think that I burst into tears at that point. The sponsor-sponsee relationship teaches me healthy and loving relationships. And that's all that is required for CoDA membership.
1
Thank you
minute
so much for your
reminder,
time.
Anne.
I have finished, and I'm so grateful for this opportunity to be part of this, even though it's very early in the morning. Thank you.
Thank you. And just one correction. I don't believe the conference endorsed version